So many of you have probably seen this video circulating social media recently, and if you didn't know, yes, that is former WWE champion Alberto Del Rio walking out to perform inside of a high school gym. And for us to truly figure out what happened, we have to first take a look at Del Rio's story and what led to his downfall in the WWE. Following the unfortunate passing of one of wrestling's most legendary names in Eddie Guerrero, WWE have put a lot of effort into finding their next big Latin superstar to represent their Spanish-speaking audience. Sure, Rey Mysterio slotted well into that role, winning his first world title following Eddie's death, but WWE struggled for a long time to find someone to take that mantle from Rey. And in 2010, WWE debuted a new Spanish star in Alberto Del Rio, looking to use him as a guy in that role. He had the look, the in-ring skills, the mic skills, and even the family lineage, with his father being another big name in Mexico, Dos Caras. And with the WWE machine behind him, it seemed like Del Rio was, in his own words, destined to become a major name in pro wrestling. But even with all these upsides, Del Rio's reputation completely tanked, and he was not only soon released, but has also been involved in several incidents that have soured many on the former WWE champion. How did Alberto's golden road to the top end up with leading him down a path of horror? Well, my name is Grish from Wrestleology, and today we find out, because this is the rise and fall of Alberto Del Rio. Before we begin talking about Del Rio's career in WWE, we should take a quick look at his time before entering the company. Before walking through the gates of WWE, Del Rio competed in both pro wrestling and MMA as the masked Dos Caras Jr. He competed in AAA, CMLL, and other promotions throughout Japan and Mexico before finally getting into contact with WWE. However, upon entering, Del Rio had already shown to be a rather shady businessman. During his negotiations, he continued to tell people that he was staying in CMLL, even going as far as to announce that he had re-signed a 4-year deal with the company. Yet just a few months later, Del Rio made his debut in WWE's developmental territory, FCW, signaling that he had signed with the promotion under his Dos Caras name. However, despite this bizarre segue into WWE, Del Rio officially signed a 3-year deal in June 2009 before finally making his debut on SmackDown the following year. In a vignette, Del Rio's character was introduced to us as a rich Mexican aristocrat who was destined to become a WWE champion. Not only that, but Del Rio came out to the ring in a fancy car with his own personal ring announcer, Ricardo Rodriguez, there to introduce Alberto Del Rio during his entrance. Already he was being presented as a future champion with a clear sense of importance, with the company ready to have him become a big name for the promotion. In fact, he was immediately thrown into a high-profile feud with Rey Mysterio upon entering SmackDown, defeating the legendary luchador on multiple occasions. Over the first few months of his career, Del Rio took on some bigger names on SmackDown's roster, like the likes of Matt Hardy, Big Show, and Christian, and he even earned a title shot at the World Heavyweight title at TLC, but losing in a fatal 4-way match. Sure, he may have suffered a loss, but Del Rio was already taking part in world title matches this early in his career, signaling that WWE pretty much had very high hopes in their next Mexican superstar. Around this time, Del Rio also took part in NXT Season 4, where he would act as a mentor to a young competitor. Yes, despite being relatively new to WWE himself, Del Rio's immediate launch up the SmackDown card led him to a prominent enough position that he was chosen to help train future WWE superstars on the show. However, while he was initially chosen to help bring up Conor O'Brien, the future Conor of the Ascension tag team, Del Rio would soon gain Brodus Clay as his rookie through the course of the show, and with them establishing a relationship in NXT, Del Rio decided to bring Brodus with him to SmackDown as his new powerhouse bodyguard. And the rocket push continued as Del Rio soon won the 2011 Royal Rumble match, outlasting 39 other people in this special 40-man Rumble, last eliminating Santino Marella. Del Rio's destiny to become world champion seemed imminent following this victory, with him soon challenging Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 27. After beginning a feud with both Edge and Christian, Del Rio rode into WrestleMania in style as he looked to drive out of the match with the gold. And interestingly enough, this would be Edge's last televised match in WWE before his first retirement. So it was kind of heartwarming upon hindsight that Edge was able to retain his championship on this occasion, defeating Del Rio and riding off into a sad retirement with a bit of positivity. Afterwards, Del Rio looked to win the vacant World Heavyweight Championship at Extreme Rules, but he lost once again, this time to Christian. A few weeks later, Del Rio was drafted over to Raw, losing Brodus in the process, and from there, Del Rio went on to feud with the Big Show, defeating him at Capital Punishment before using this momentum to enter the Money in the Bank ladder match the following month. There, Alberto was able to capture the briefcase, earning him an opportunity at the WWE Championship anytime he wanted. And after the main event, it looked as though Del Rio was going to cash in that very same night. You see, following orders from Vince McMahon, Del Rio ran down to the ring to cash in on the briefcase on the newly minted champion, CM Punk, only to be quickly dispatched by Punk before officially cashing in. But Del Rio was able to cash in at SummerSlam the following month, taking advantage of an attack by Kevin Nash onto Punk in order to finally crown himself as the WWE Champion. However, in hindsight, Alberto's actual reign felt somewhat odd around this time, given that he cashed in on Punk, who was going through the hottest period of his career at the time. Sure, his cash-in tends to sit in the back of wrestling fans' minds because of the circumstances, but people tend to forget what he did as champion in any of his reigns. And it's not hard to see why, as he was clearly champion at the wrong time, always acting as the distant third to John Cena and Punk. This is probably why he lost the belt to Cena the very next pay-per-view at Night of Champions. But WWE did still see Del Rio as a world championship contender, with him beating both Punk and Cena at Hell in a Cell to recapture the championship before cementing himself as another top player by beating Cena at Vengeance in another bizarre match, given that the ring had collapsed in the prior Big Show and Mark Henry match. From there, Punk would re-enter the title picture though, challenging and defeating Del Rio at Survivor Series, and Alberto failed to recapture the title in his rematch at TLC, picking up an injury the following night on Raw that took him out of action for several months. Upon his return, Del Rio was immediately reinserted back into the World Heavyweight Championship scene, with Sheamus now holding the gold. Del Rio challenged the Celtic Warrior to a losing effort at Over the Limit in a fatal 4-way bout, only to lose again in a singles rematch for the belt at Money in the Bank 2012. And his feud with Sheamus would continue on for several months on end, with both men battling over the championship at SummerSlam and Night of Champions. Each time, Del Rio would lose to the Irishman, with WWE heavily pushing Sheamus around this time as a potential main event babyface for the future, and seeing Del Rio as a big challenge for him to face off against. This feud also served to give Del Rio's ring announcer, Ricardo Rodriguez, a bit more character. He accidentally caused Del Rio a few matches during this feud, with the most notable example coming at SummerSlam as Sheamus intercepted a shoe that Ricardo threw in the ring, hitting Alberto with it. This would end up being a small seed for something in the future, but we'll get to that later. For now, Del Rio would just linger outside of the world title picture, facing off against several more high-profile names. He began a rivalry with the established top name Randy Orton, and they competed at both Hell in a Cell and Survivor Series, with this feud being largely uneventful as Orton dominated his opponent throughout the months. After concluding this feud with Randy, Del Rio soon made a major change to his character. You see, after watching 3MB make fun of the Spanish announce team during a Miz TV segment, Ricardo Rodriguez, of all people, came down to defend them. 3MB quickly attacked Ricardo before Del Rio came down to make the save, choosing to team up with The Miz and a mystery partner to take on 3MB later that night. The person who answered, well, that was none other than the Brooklyn Brawler. Yeah, if you want to go back and watch this bizarre 6-man tag team match, all you have to do is load up the TLC 2012 event to see Del Rio's babyface turn take place in quite odd fashion. But with the team of the Brooklyn Brawler, The Miz, and Alberto Del Rio all getting the victory, Del Rio headed over to SmackDown with a new Latino hero character. As he defended the Spanish-speaking crowd at home, Ricardo Rodriguez would become a bigger and bigger part of Del Rio's act. He would act almost as a comedy victim of Del Rio's opponents, with Alberto constantly coming in to defend his friend. Leading into the Royal Rumble, Ricardo found himself on the wrong side of the then World Heavyweight Champion, Big Show. After having his name randomly drawn from a rolling tumbler, Ricardo was named #1 contender for Big Show's championship, with Show assaulting Ricardo on multiple occasions. So, in order to avenge his friend, Del Rio would challenge Show to a last man standing match at the Rumble. There, Del Rio took inspiration from John Cena's own last man standing match with Batista as he duct taped Big Show's legs to the bottom rope, trapping him. Show was unable to free himself, forced to stay on the ground for the count of 10, and Del Rio cleverly won his first World Heavyweight Championship. And now with the gold secured around his waist, Del Rio was able to successfully defend his belt at Elimination Chamber before transitioning into a feud with Jack Swagger for WrestleMania 29. Swagger, acting as an anti-immigrant alongside his manager Zeb Coulter, targeted the new heroic Mexican champion. Del Rio, however, was able to defeat Swagger at Mania before defeating both Jack and Coulter in a handicap match the next night, ending the feud. But with Del Rio now hurt following his victory, an opportunity was presented for the then holder of the Money in the Bank briefcase, Dolph Ziggler. Flanked by Big E Langston and AJ Lee, Dolph Ziggler marched down to the ring with the excitement of the WWE Universe behind him. This was like one of the biggest pops of all time. From there, Ziggler officially cashed in the briefcase, creating one of the most iconic Money in the Bank moments of all time. And after a tense back and forth struggle from both men, Ziggler was able to win the match as the post-Mania crowd absolutely erupted. This cash-in proved a few things about Dolph Ziggler and Del Rio. For Ziggler, it was that the crowd was ready to see Dolph get his flowers after organically becoming one of the most popular guys on the roster in spite of WWE's booking. And for Del Rio, it was clear that fans just didn't really want to cheer Alberto. Maybe it was because of his lackluster title feuds with Big Show and Jack Swagger, but it's proven in the time since that Del Rio was just a naturally hateable guy. So it's clear that he works a lot better as a heel than he does a babyface. Because of this, during their title rematch at Payback, a double turn occurred, which saw Del Rio turn heel on Ziggler after repeatedly targeting the injured head of the champion. Alberto used this injury to win back the gold before defeating Dolph again at Money in the Bank to dispatch of his rival, all while Ziggler's intense love of the crowd slowly diminishing following this feud. From there, Del Rio would begin branching off into feuds against Christian and Rob Van Dam, two men who beat Alberto in non-title matches on SmackDown. However, after losing to Van Dam, Del Rio's anger would build into blind rage. He attacked Ricardo after his interference in the match backfired, resulting in Ricardo joining Rob Van Dam and leaving Del Rio behind to fend for himself. But despite this, Alberto still proved to be a formidable champion as he successfully defended his title against Christian at SummerSlam and Rob Van Dam at Night of Champions in Battleground. After his defense at Battleground, Del Rio was forced into a match with Ricardo on Raw by general manager Vicky Guerrero. However, before getting into the action, Vicky announced that Del Rio would defend his title at Hell in a Cell against a returning John Cena. Because of this distraction, Ricardo was able to quickly wrap Alberto up into a 3 count for Del Rio's future as world champion looking grim. And at Hell in a Cell, Cena's momentum after returning from the injury would catapult him into the victory as he won the World Heavyweight Championship. Also, fun fact about that event, I believe that was Hell in a Cell 2013, that was my first time ever sitting on the floor. It was on my 13th birthday and my dad bought us tickets and I sat on the floor. It was pretty cool. Enough of the yapping though. Anyway, following this loss, Del Rio would go through a few-week feud with Sin Cara, trading back and forth wins with the Masked Superstar before soon transitioning into a feud with the returning Batista. In the 2014 Royal Rumble match, Alberto was eliminated by Batista, who won the whole match, obviously adding more fuel to Del Rio's anger. However, with Batista winning the match in place of Daniel Bryan, the guy that pretty much everyone wanted to win, Alberto's feud with Batista felt really hollow and devoid of fan intrigue. And with many in the WWE Universe growing stale with Del Rio around this time, Batista's return singles match in nearly 4 years ended in a whimper as he beat Alberto Del Rio at Elimination Chamber. Afterwards, Del Rio lingered around the upper midcard scene as his popularity steadily declined. Following his elimination from the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, Alberto failed to capture any championship gold despite numerous attempts at becoming a champion. He lost the Money in the Bank ladder match, he lost to Sheamus numerous times in his quest to become United States champion, and he lost a Battle Royale at Battleground over the vacant Intercontinental Championship. However, it was around this time that backstage reports had started popping up surrounding the Latin superstar. On August 7th, 2014, Del Rio was fired from WWE due to unprofessional conduct. In this instant, I can actually see where Alberto is coming from. You see, according to reports, Del Rio slapped the WWE social media manager Cody Barberi following a racist joke made by him. In response, WWE tweeted out a series of tweets. Alberto Del Rio is responsible for his own actions. If you're angry at anyone, be angry at Alberto. There's no excuse for a pro athlete not to conduct themselves in a professional manager. Now, while I see where Alberto is coming from, I kind of think both sides are at fault here. Of course, racism is a horrible thing, and if Del Rio felt that angry and threatened by the racist remark, then sure, Cody Barberi should have been punished. He should have been fired and fed to the streets for all I care. However, it's never really appropriate to act violently like Del Rio did, especially given the stories that we will soon get to about Del Rio's more violent tendencies. Neither party handled the situation correctly in my opinion, with it appearing as though WWE was punishing Del Rio for standing up to a racist, all while ignoring the actual racist comments made in the first place. It was soon reported that Barberi actually left the company though, which is good, and perhaps with the rest of the minorities in the locker room breathing down his neck from the whole situation as well. So, since WWE did end up getting rid of him, I'd say that was a really good move. But with WWE now freshly seared from the whole situation, Del Rio looked to re-enter the company to once again put his destiny to the test. So at the Hell in a Cell event, Alberto made a shocking return as the surprise opponent of John Cena, defeating him and becoming the United States champion. And this title fit Del Rio's new gimmick, as he, alongside Zeb Coulter, who used to be Jack Swagger's manager, formed the unofficial Mex America group. From there, Del Rio would look to add the vacated WWE Championship to his collection of gold, but failed in winning a tournament to crown the new champion. Out of this tournament came a growing feud though between Sheamus and Roman Reigns over the title, with Sheamus forming the League of Nations faction in order to take on the big dog. Soon, Del Rio would join Sheamus, Wade Barrett, and Rusev in this group as the foreign heel group looking to dominate the WWE. Unfortunately, the group ended up being pretty useless when things were said and done, acting more as a stepping stone for Roman Reigns rather than a real threat. Hell, Alberto lost so much momentum from being in the group that he also lost his US title to Kalisto on an episode of Raw, not even like a big pay-per-view bout or anything. So with the League of Nations disbanding following a WrestleMania segment with Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, Del Rio would find himself stuck in limbo on the roster, mainly being used to give others credible victories, and Alberto grew more and more frustrated with his lack of direction. And after violating the WWE wellness policy on August 18th in 2016, Del Rio exercised an opt-out clause in his contract that allowed him to leave the company. He would later cite several reasons for his unhappiness, claiming he was falsely promised a main event push upon his return in 2015. But perhaps he was mad at WWE for how they handled his relationship with former women's champion Paige. And this is where things get weird. So, around this time, Del Rio and Paige made their romantic relationship public, with the young couple starting a journey that would strongly affect the reputation of both superstars. After getting tattoos for each other just a few weeks after revealing their relationship to the public, both Del Rio and Paige constantly found themselves in the news. While Paige joined Del Rio in his wellness violation, both wrestlers also found themselves in trouble with the police throughout the months. In October of 2016, Alberto was scheduled to compete for AAA, with a flight from San Antonio set for the former world champion. However, Alberto never made it to the show as he was reportedly attacked. Pictures were then released by Del Rio showing cuts and marks all over his body. However, when it came down to the details of this attack, Alberto had gone back and forth several times. The story had changed so many times that many people still don't know what fully happened that night, with Alberto acting as a very unreliable narrator. A few weeks later, however, Del Rio was back in the ring and competing on an independent show in Puerto Rico. After his match, Alberto was shocked to see Paige standing there alongside him, and in a move nobody saw coming, Paige got down on one knee and proposed to Alberto. Despite Alberto still legally having a wife, with both Alberto and his ex-wife still going through the divorce process, Paige got up the nerve to ask Alberto to spend the rest of his life with her. After the two embraced, with Alberto saying yes to Paige's proposal, several members of Paige's family took to Twitter to announce their displeasure with her relationship. Even Paige's father said in a short message, "I am totally against my daughter marrying that man." After getting her much needed neck surgery just 3 days after the proposal, Paige and Del Rio once again popped up on the news in December. Backstage at another indie show, Del Rio was involved in a backstage fight as one of the wrestlers believed that Alberto had touched Paige in an inappropriate manner. More fights around Paige ensued over the weeks also, before Del Rio was officially arrested on December 30th. And there, Alberto and his brother had assaulted a fan at another indie show, sending him to the hospital and the brothers into police custody. The bad news only continued though, with Del Rio once again appearing on the news in April 2017. He went live from his phone, going on a drunken rant about Triple H and the WWE. In case his standing with the company wasn't bad enough, this was just another nail in the coffin of Del Rio's WWE career. And after a few months later, Del Rio and Paige were seen having a heated argument in Orlando International Airport. There, witnesses saw Del Rio reportedly lay his hands on his fiancée before Paige threw a drink at him, seemingly running away from him. Audio of the situation reveals Paige screaming, "Leave me the F alone," clearly in an angry and potentially frightened state. It was said by many backstage that Paige and Del Rio had frequently broken up and gotten back together, as they constantly fought. In November, the two finally broke up for good, with Paige finally looking to be in a happy place in life now that this chapter was behind her. In the years since, Paige has described some of the abuse she went through during the relationship. Some of the stuff she talks about is honestly disgusting and will probably get us in trouble with YouTube if we talk about it here, but basically physical and mental abuse existed through their entire relationship, with frequent drug use present as well. This chapter in both their lives is regrettable to say the very least, with the separation only proving beneficial for Paige. As for Del Rio, however, well, things only continued to spiral following the breakup. In May 2020, Alberto was arrested in San Antonio after allegedly battering and essaying his girlfriend. Charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, Del Rio was released on $50,000 bail. Unfortunately, after several delayed trials, the charges were dropped on December 10th, 2021. But yeah, as you see, when he first entered WWE, Del Rio was seen as the next big Latino star for the company. As a performer, Alberto had just about everything he needed to succeed. He had the look, the pedigree, and the athleticism to thrive in the company. But in the early days of his career, Del Rio had an odd string of bad luck. His first real shot at the main event scene came during his feud with Edge, which is a feud that looked to be continuing after WrestleMania until his devastating retirement. His second chance took place during the out-of-nowhere rise of CM Punk, with Del Rio stuck feeling as a mid-card world champion, underneath Punk and Cena of course. And his next real shot came with his feud against the likes of Sheamus, Big Show, and Jack Swagger. And you know, it's gonna be pretty hard to have any sort of blowaway matches with those guys. Well, at least in 2012, you know, we love you, Sheamus. However, each one of those chances came with diminishing returns as fans just soured on Del Rio. And then there's the personal issues he had a few years later. The drugs, his relationship with Paige, his arrest in 2020. These are only a few of the reasons of why his reputation has tanked with pro wrestling fans. His name had been put on a blacklist in pretty much every major company. You're more likely to see the former WWE champion in a high school gym rather than you are in an arena, and I hope that explains why that video went viral recently. While he was once destined to become another top name in WWE, Del Rio's disgusting actions outside the ring have turned one of the most wrestling's exciting prospects into one of the darkest parts of recent history. And if you enjoyed, please like the video and subscribe.